Today we're going to look at the book Grandpa's Face by Eloise Greenfield. This story is about a little girl named Tamika who loves her grandfather very much. And she loves watching his face because his expressions change all the time. But one day she sees Grandpa's face change in a way that she's never seen before. And Tamika's feelings about her grandfather change also. As we read Grandpa's Face, we're going to be combining what we know about making inferences. Today, we will look at a character's thoughts and actions to form ideas about the characters that the author does not directly tell us. And we're going to use our inferencing card to help us. We only have one vocabulary word for this book. The word is sturdy. Sturdy means strong. Our learning target today is I want you to be able to use the characters' thoughts and their actions to form ideas about the characters that the author doesn't directly tell us. So let's get started with the first part of our lesson using Grandpa's Face. Tamika loved her grandpa. She loved the quiet way he talked and the surprise of his loud laughter. She loved the stories he told, long stories that he sang and talked, a little bit each day until he reached the end. Most of all, Tamika loved Grandpa's face. Grandpa's face told everything about him. It was always changing from glad to worried to funny to sad. Grandpa could ask a question without saying one word, and even when he was mad with Tamika, his face was a good face, and the look of his mouth and eyes told her that he loved her. "You shouldn't have done that, Tamika," Grandpa would say. And Tamika would tell him she was sorry, and then she would kiss the sturdy brown of his face. Inferences are ideas not revealed by the author in the text. When we infer, we use clues from what the character is saying, doing, or thinking to figure out what the character might be thinking and feeling. In this beginning part, we learn that Tamika can tell what Grandpa is thinking and feeling just by looking at his face. And from this action, I can make an inference about Tamika. We're going to use this chart to keep up with our thinking. This makes me think Tamika and her grandfather spend a lot of time together, and she knows him well if she can just look at his face and know that he's worried or sad or mad at her. I want you to remember that readers describe characters by making inferences from character dialogue, actions, and thoughts, and use the information to explain how it contributes to the sequence of events in the story. So let's get back to the text. Sometimes Tamika and Grandpa would go out together, just the two of them. They would leave Mama and Daddy at home and go for a walk. A talk walk, Grandpa called it. They'd walk through the park or just around the neighborhood and talk about things that they saw and felt and remembered. In the summer, Grandpa was an actor, and some Saturday afternoons he and his friend, Miss Gladys, would take Tamika to the theater to watch him act on the stage, if Mama and Daddy said the play wasn't too grown up. The theater was Tamika's favorite place to go. Make-believe things happened there. She would sit in the front row and watch Grandpa turn into another person, changing his face and the way he walked and talked and sang. And even when he turned into somebody else's grandpa, Tamika didn't mind. It looked true and it felt true, but she knew it was just a play. And when it was over, all the actors came out to bow and wave, and she would clap so hard that her hands hurt. One day, Tamika went to Grandpa's room to ask for a story. She stopped at the door because Grandpa was rehearsing. He had his book in his hand and he was reading his lines aloud. Then he stopped reading and looked in the mirror, slowly changing his face into a face that Tamika had never seen before. It was a hard face. It had a tight mouth and cold, cold eyes. It was a face that could never love her or anyone. Here we see an action and inner thoughts where we can infer some ideas. Tamika sees her grandfather rehearsing and he makes a face that frightens her. What are you thinking or inferring about Tamika? About her grandfather? Take a moment to think about it. So I know our character here is still Tamika. And she walks in and sees her grandfather rehearsing, and he's making a face that really scares her. I think the important thing that we can infer here is Tamika's feelings about her grandfather have changed. She's afraid of him and afraid of what she saw him doing. Another thing that you might be inferring at this point is that maybe she doesn't understand that he's practicing his facial expressions. I'm also thinking about the grandfather. And I don't think the grandfather knows that Tamika is behind him watching him rehearse. So, once again, readers describe characters by making inferences from character dialogue, actions, and thoughts, and use that information to explain how it contributes to the sequence of events in a story. Tamika stood watching as Grandpa changed his face back and read some more lines from his book. Then she went to her room and sat on the bed. Her stomach was filled with scared places that made her want to cry. She had not known that Grandpa could look like that, and now that she did know, she couldn't be sure that he might not someday look at her with that face that could not love. She got out her jigsaw puzzle and played with it quietly until Mama and Daddy had finished cooking dinner. Then she washed her hands and sat down at the table, but she didn't feel like eating. She felt like doing bad things, all the things that Grandpa didn't like. So she made a hill out of her mashed potatoes and let her green peas roll down the hill. "Stop playing with your food, Tamika," Mama said, "and eat your dinner." There are several thoughts and actions we can infer from across these two pages. Listen carefully as I reread these two pages and choose one thought or action that we could possibly add to our chart. And then I want you to think about, what could we infer? What idea or inference do you have that is not shared in the text or in the picture? Tamika stood watching as Grandpa changed his face back and read some more lines from his book. Then she went to her room and sat on the bed. Her stomach was filled with scared places that made her want to cry. She had not known that Grandpa could look like that, and now that she did know, she couldn't be sure that he might not someday look at her with that face that could not love. She got out her jigsaw puzzle and played with it quietly until Mama and Daddy had finished cooking dinner. Then she washed her hands and sat down at the table, but she didn't feel like eating. She felt like doing bad things, all the things that Grandpa didn't like. So she made a hill out of her mashed potatoes and let her green peas roll down the hill. "Stop playing with your food, Tamika," Mama said, "and eat your dinner." So the first person you might be thinking about is Tamika. And in the book, it says she doesn't feel like eating dinner. So I can infer that she's still upset about what she saw Grandpa doing. Another thing that Tamika is doing in these two pages is it says that she feels like doing things that Grandpa doesn't like, so she starts playing with her food. And I can infer that she wants to make him feel as badly as she does. We've been making a lot of inferences about Tamika, but I want to think about Mama. And it says in the book that she tells Tamika to stop playing with her food and eat her dinner. But I can infer that Mama doesn't really understand the reason that Tamika is behaving the way that she is. So the thing that I want you to remember from today is that readers describe characters by making inferences from their dialogue, their action, and their thoughts, and they use that information to explain how it contributes to the sequence of events in a story. Your writing assignment for today is to use the sentence stem on the Making an Inference card and write 2 sentences about Tamika's inner thoughts or actions. The stem is "I'm thinking blank because Tamika blank." And if you need to look back at the video and look at the pages of the story, you're welcome to do that. Have an adult send me a picture of your writing on Dojo when you're finished.